Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Sakamoto Days, Season 1, Episode 8. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I love that the opening is Hisuke showing up, but he finds Hannah at the convenience store crying because she was like, oh, it was like bring your parents to school day, and she's like, I wanted to talk to everyone about it, but you know, Zhao Tang's not here, Shin's not here, and Dad's not here. And I love he's like, oh, here's some like acorns and some candy. But he's like, all right, you want me to find everyone for you? I will. So he sends Pisuke out to search for them. So I thought that was really sweet. I thought he was just going to simply be like, hey, I'm going to listen to you. But it's like, well, he obviously hasn't hung around them at all. Because, I mean, it'd be a different thing if he was already working here. Which I wonder is going to flow into the whole, like, I guess he just will never work at the convenience store. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see what the future holds. But I thought he was just going to listen to Hannah and stuff like that. Because just looking at the outro, like you could tell he becomes part of the family where he hangs around. I mean, he's also kind of very childlike in his own way. So I'm sure that kind of plays into, like, you know, him looking after Hannah from time to time. But either way, we get back to Asakura. It's him, was it Tanaka and Zhao Tang all locked up, and she's choking him because she's like, wait, you're the leader of this lab? Why did you kidnap him? He's like, if I kidnapped you, why would I be in the cell with you? She's like, huh, that's actually a good point. And so we learn about Shin's backstory through him. I think I was I can't remember all that I said last episode. I think I misinterpreted, thinking like Shin had the potential in him already, and the experiments just expanded upon so my thinking was he already had the potential to have psychic abilities, and whatever experiments happened, I thought like expanded that and made it brought it to the forefront. But it seems like no, he was just a regular kid before the experiments. All we know is he was dropped off by this guy named Ando that Asakura knows, and it's like why he decided to drop Shin off here is a big question. So there's still a lot of question marks left for Shin's backstory, like who are his parents? Did he ever go looking for his parents? Anytime he was at the lab, I mean, we only got snapshots of the lab, but we don't know if it's a thing of, at no point while he was at the lab did he ask for his parents or anything like that. So makes you wonder, were they dead? Could Ando have been a relative of his? Like maybe not his dad, but maybe his grandfather? You don't think, looking at the silhouette, I'm curious, and now in retrospect, you don't think Ando's the old man who is from the Order, do you? Because now thinking back on the silhouette, I was like, it did kind of look a little hunched over. Like, and I was like, and that does seem to be his somewhat default. So I'm like, interesting. If that's the case, considering that would make Shin has a tie to the Order. If that were the case, if it's the same dude. And by the old guy, I'm like, the guy that has the sword in the opening who's a part of the Order. Like that guy, like not unless he's Ando and he's the one that dropped Shin off. Because I didn't even think about that at the time, but now in retrospect, I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder, like, it could also be a thing of, you know, the Order killed his parents because maybe his parents were hitmen and they broke like some JAA like laws or whatever, because that's their main reason for stepping in. It's like when you cross like which it's that interesting thing of like, oh, you're hitmen, are there really laws? It's like, yes, our organization has its own laws. You break those, you get got. I guess you have to break a certain amount of them. You know, I guess it depends on the severity of your laws and severity of like the laws you broke. But I'm wondering if that's what happened to Shin's family. Like maybe they broke some laws, because we still don't know how Shin got into the hitman world either. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Hisuke, kind of stumbled into it, so maybe Shin did as well. I don't know. It's gonna be maybe the continuation of this arc will explore that, or maybe that's just something we will dive into later on. But like I said, I'm theorizing that it's probably the old man from the Order. Now, I could be 100% wrong, and I don't want to know that I'm right. I'm just, once again, spitballing, throwing out theories, but it just, like, the silhouette just made me think it might be him, but I could be mistaken, so. Yeah, like it said, it's just interesting that Shin never bothered, like, asking for his parents from what we saw of his time in the lab, but he was just like, yeah, the annoying brat that Asakura got stuck looking after, so. And he's trying to develop supernatural abilities because he believes in the long run is going to make the world a happier place. I don't know why his belief is that. I'm trying to understand. I'm wondering what that like thought process was. I mean, obviously it's your life research and you think there's a lot of good that can come from it. But Shin accidentally drunk the stuff he was working on to make it, because Shin believed in Asakura, because Asakura is like, yo, this will make people happy. And so the other colleagues didn't believe in Asakura's vision except for Shin, because he's like, yeah, he says it's going to happen. Like, even if you don't believe it, like, I believe it, and Asakura believes that something could come from it. And Asakura, so used to being badmouthed by so many other people, now it's like he's hearing, like, even this little brat is cheering me on and believing in me. And now my research seems to have come to fruition, and Shin ended up drinking it and gaining his powers. And it's all fun and, everything, and Shin's a kid enjoying it, but the problem is it started creeping people out. So now we kind of come full circle with the point that it was kind of clear last episode, the way Xiao Tang talked about it, like, yo, how can I be comfortable around you when you could read my mind at any point in time? Like, Shin, it just brought him back to his childhood, why he ran away from the lab in the first place. It's because people felt weird around him, because he was such a weird and creepy kid, being able to read their mind, and it made them uncomfortable. And Asakura him feeling bad about it. It's like, right, you drunk, this is my life's work that turned you into this. I want to get rid of these powers. I'm gonna find a way to cure you. But for Shin, he felt like Asakura saying that was a spit in the face to everything, because he's like, no, these powers are going to make people happy. And I'm curious, is that why Shin has such a positive outlook? Despite some negative connotations from people's outlook on his powers, he has a more positive outlook, because he's like, maybe with these powers, I can make people happy, which is ironic considering he went off to become a hitman. So, but we don't know. Like, he probably killed other bad people. It's probably never innocent people he ever killed. So maybe in his mind, it's like, yeah, with my powers, I'm getting rid of bad people in the world, so I'm making the world a better place. That could be the thought process. Kind of coming at it from like an anti-hero perspective. Who knows? We don't know all the people that Shin has ever taken out, but Shin doesn't seem like the type that would go after innocent people. He's not necessarily like the order where he's going after other hitmen, but it seems like he could have just gone after other criminals that were meant to be taken out, So who knows? So there's a lot to kind of question on that front too. But once again, it's like this, he looked at it as a gift rather than a curse. And for him, it's like, it's an extension of Asakura wanting to make the world a happy place. And I think having these powers kind of made him happy, because he feels like, yo, I'm kind of like the first step in like the direction of Asakura making the world happy, and you kind of wanting to take that away from me feels like, once again, a spit in the face to what you want. And sometime after that, Shin left and ran away. And his own shame, I think, is what kept... I'm sure Shin went out of his way to hide himself, but Asakura just felt so much shame that he never chased after Shin. And, you have Tanaka and Xiao Tang, like, both crying up a storm about this story. But I love the whole notion, as we're learning more and more about the Sakamoto family rules. Number 11 is that basically when you have issues, make up that, like, when you have a fight one day, you make up that same day, So she's like, me and Shin had our fight, so Mr. Scientist guy, you should also make up with Shin too. It might have, it's not that you're quite a bit past the whole same day situation, but now it's better now than never. So they finally break out, because Asakura could have broken out at any point in time, but he chose not to, because he's like, if I'm free, that would just force me, like, me being locked up means less of me helping them with their research. So all the while that's happening, Sakamoto and Shin are dealing with the scientists. I was like, is he really just dumb? It's like, no, we get more of them this episode. And it's not just Shin that's been infected. So has Sakamoto, because now he's made it so that there's a switch in Sakamoto's brain that every time he tries to hit the enemy, he hits a friend instead. And I love that Sakamoto was like, well, all I have to do is just try and hit Shin and I hit you. And I love Shin's like, why did that blow against me that was quote unquote meant for me way stronger than the previous one? It's like, well, he's, I'm sure for Sakamoto, it's like, well, I got to put my everything into this, but it's probably like from Shin's perspective, it's like, well, you didn't know for sure that was going to work before you put more power into it. So, but also the problem is, this guy can shut it on and off and kind of make Sakamoto stop, and he can, still has so much control over their bodies, especially because he got injected Shin more and shut his body down, and then proceeded to like make fun of his power. He's like, why would they even care about you? That power is so lame and stupid. It falls before my genius, yada, yada, yada. But then Sakamoto's like, yo, his power isn't worthless, and I'll prove it to you. So Shin stands in front of the guy, and Sakamoto attacks. And it's like, right, basically Sakamoto needs to hit him by hitting Shin. So it's like, all right, Shin, I'm gonna come with a right. So dodge that, and then left, and just proceeded to hit him with a barrage. And I love the guy. I love that, like, the entire time he's talking, he's doing a like he's like spitting at the same time he's getting hit. And so poor guy got rinsed in that moment. So it all worked out in the end. So that was pretty impressive teamwork on their part. So luckily, they were also able to remove all of the needles from everybody's body, so everybody's returned to normal. But all the scientists are happy to see Shin because they're happy to see how much he's grown. That they felt bad because it's like they never had a chance to apologize, because they're like, right, you were a kid and we kind of said all that stuff, or thought that stuff we shouldn't have. But now it's nice to know, like, he's like, no, I'm okay. Like, the fact is, I found a place that he belongs, with Sakamoto, and then so it's like, right, he's being taken care of and he looks good and he's happy. So. And then he proceeded to call Sakamoto fat, and then Sakamoto thought about killing him in his head. It's like, yeah, like, calling me fat is kind of a move too far. So then Sakamoto explains more about the Order, about how one member of the Order could basically kill 10 Shins in, like, it would take less than a second each to kill each one of them. So it's like, yeah, if you ever run into a member of the Order, play dead, which I'm like, well, we know 2 of them are here. So I was like, is Shin going to run into him because we're setting this up? But it's like, no, Sakamoto is the one. And I love classic cartoon-esque element of they're walking on air when the floor opens up. He kicks Shin out of the way and falls down. So I was like, well, if you're going to a lower area, and we saw that our 2 Order members are in, like, the 5th level basement, I'm like, you guys must run into each other then, right? And so they slaughtered a few people, and they're going up against what's her name, Asagiri, the girl, the woman in black. She ends up calling him Mr. Reindeer, and his 2 cronies are immediately taken out by initially they were ready to attack Hammer Dude, but a woman with, like, the giant buzzsaw sliced him up, and he was like, I was trying to get out of the way, because I know you're always, everything you do is a bloody mess, so I was trying not to get blood on my face. And I love, she's like, oh, how do you know the blood wasn't there? He's like, that's the type of stuff that makes you lose friends, I guess, because he's like, don't try and gaslight me in this moment. But I wasn't expecting Reindeer Dude to start crying. I was like, is he a psychopath? I mean, to some extent, you gotta be, I guess. But I was like, he was like, those people, like, do you not care about lives that you kill? I was like, so he has, like, a twisted version on the Sakamoto family perspective, where he's like, oh, you don't realize the preciousness of life. Which even she was like, hasn't he killed, like, a lot of people too? He's like, yeah, but it's all for the purposes of slur. So it's like, he's going to twist it to be like, oh, I have some grand... The deaths I've caused have all been for a greater purpose because I'm serving slur, and he asked me of it. So it's a greater purpose behind me killing people. So it's not the same thing, which I thought was so interesting. Once again, you're kind of splitting hairs, but it's like, as long as I'm killing for a greater cause, it's fine. For some reason, Reindeer Dude kind of reminds me of Buggy. I can't explain. I guess because of the whole pulling his body parts off thing, kind of reminds me of Buggy from One Piece a little bit. But like, he tears off one, like, he's just, like, he even says he has, like, a man-made skeleton. He has, like, a gun inside of his mouth, a gun inside of his left hand, a slew of blades out of his blades in his left hand and gun in his right hand and a gun in his mouth. So obviously, Hammer Dude literally knocked his head around, but that didn't do anything because he's got, like he said, a man-made skeleton, so he was able to snap himself back into place. But then Sakamoto drops down and lands on top of him. I was curious what this reunion was going to be like, but he was like, oh, hey, what's up? He's like, oh, yeah, Sakamoto, what's up? I was like, oh, a lot more chill. You would thought there would be more beef. But once again, it's interesting considering... Nagumo, like, kind of made it seem like he didn't run into Sakamoto. Maybe I'm misremembering, but could have sworn he made it seem like he didn't run into him, so thought that was fascinating. But it seems like everything's chill. I also wasn't expecting him being like, oh yeah, this is our new member. I was like, oh, interesting. So she popped up sometime after Sakamoto bowed out, which I thought was interesting. I guess I just assumed everyone that was... It makes me wonder those other members, at least the other 3 that didn't show up to the meeting. I'm wondering, were they... new members that showed up after Sakamoto left, or because, like, at least to be fair, it's like she was the only one that wasn't really involved in the Sakamoto conversation. It was mainly the other dude and Nagumo who were mainly talking about him, but I think Hammer Dude was also part of that conversation too. So I guess showing like they've been there makes you wonder who are the OG members, like who was there first in the order. Like were all of them there first, and like what was the original number of the order? Was it five or something like that, or like was Sakamoto there in the early days, or did he join sometime afterwards? Stuff like that is interesting. But Sakamoto ends up fighting against a reindeer guy, which he brings up something interesting where he's like, "You're the only person that ever scarred him," and then Hammer Dude's like, "Oh." Wait, so you know who Slur is? Like you cross paths with him? Maybe it's like obviously he's going by a nickname, but I guess him and Sakamoto have history. I guess he must be the one that put the bounty on Sakamoto for whatever reason. Considering Nagumo did bring that up a couple episodes ago, it's like interesting how the like Slur started killing all these other hitmen after it came around the same time the bounty was put on you. So that wasn't just pure coincidence. He want because he has issues with Sakamoto apparently. So that's interesting. But the two from the order are mainly after Slur, so they leave Reindeer Dude to Sakamoto, which I also love. The lady is infatuated with Sakamoto because he reminds her of a giant teddy bear, which I'm sure I'm sure Hannah would probably agree in that same capacity. So I just thought that was cute that he had to be like, oh, something's wrong with you? And just the entire time she's just focusing on him. She even calls him Mr. Teddy Bear later on. I mean, she doesn't call anyone by their actual name, it seems like, except for people she knows. If she doesn't know you, she'll call you by attributes like Home Dude is Mr. Reindeer to her, and Sakamoto is Mr. Teddy Bear to her. So I just thought that was kind of neat. I would never expected that to be part of her personality. The fact is that she's kind of got that cute side to her like that, because she has such a very like stoic, like blank demeanor, and just this, because at first I'm wondering like, can they see her light up like that, or is that supposed to be us seeing her on the inside? The fact is they show it on her face makes me think like, no, it is legitimately on her face where everyone could see, but maybe not. Maybe that's just the viewer perspective on being able to see like what she's really feeling looking at Sakamoto. So that's interesting. But other than that, we also have Shin making his way to Lou and them until he runs into Seba, which is like, well, you're fighting against a guy that can turn invisible. It's pretty hard to kind of contend with that. It's like you can read his mind, sure, but if you don't know what the attack is looking like and what direction it's coming from, it's like you know he's attacking, you just don't know which way the attack is coming and in what form. It makes it hard. But because he's able to read his mind, he is able to avoid any like fatal wounds. And the guy talks about like, oh, Seba's like, I am like, I guess I'm gonna have to kill you. But he's like, wait, was I supposed to bring you in alive? He's very lackadaisical with his job, but he's like, I'm gonna do just enough work. I'm not gonna work overtime, but I'm not gonna underplay this because I gotta get my hours in. So I don't want this to end too quickly, but I'm not gonna go above. Like I'm gonna get 20 million and then I'm out. That's kind of his shtick. It's like when he gets like 20 million from his hitman job, then he's gonna quit all of this. So that's fascinating. I'm assuming we're gonna see that at some point. I mean, him bow out of all of this. It's going to be interesting to see what the aftermath of all this is. I could definitely see this being kind of like a Katekyo Hitman Reborn, where like every character, even the bad guys, people who are once enemies, show up later on as semi-allies. I could definitely see this story kind of having a similar way about it. Because like Hitman Reborn, there's plenty of animes and manga that have done that, I'm sure. But like Hitman Reborn... I mean, obviously Hitman, comparison, but it's just like, both dealing with Hitman, but it just, because obviously tonally this is a lot like Katekyo Hitman Reborn, but there's a lot of adversaries that eventually turn into semi-allies at later points in the series, so I definitely could feel like some of these characters probably aren't like, well, because it's like, what's evil in the grand scheme of the Hitman world? We've all kind of killed people, so we just kind of move along. But Sakamoto is going to be the type of person that enforces that, because he's going to, he makes Shin and Liu kind of adhere to that rule as well. So I could definitely see like, hey, even though we're temporarily working together, while you're in my vicinity, you're going to adhere to like my family rule of no killing. So we'll see how that all shakes up. But yeah, I was curious to see how that situation was going to play out with Seba, because I thought like, oh, Liu was going to show up, Xiao but instead the Peace Gate flew by and I was like, oh boy. At first I thought like, oh, that meant like Heisuke was there, which he was, but Shin ends up getting stabbed and then like splatters the blood on him, and I was like, right. And then Heisuke shows up and lights him up with 3 shots, and it's like, yep, a guy that can turn invisible. This is pretty incredible, ain't it, Heisuke? So Shin's luckily got some help, so it's gonna be interesting to see how that whole situation, how that whole fight turns out, especially with Shin, Atsukoda, and Tanaka like on their way. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.